storm is estimated by the modelers to be a $28 billion storm. And that's another layer of cost. What the Senate is saying is, let's include that as well in a kind of super reinsurance pool. That way you really are putting the full faith and credit of the state of Florida behind hurricane losses for a 100-year storm. Insurance companies would take the first layer, but the first layer is, most of the claims, because most claims are relatively small claims. And the typical storm is not a $28 billion or a $20 billion or a $10 billion storm. It may be a $2 billion storm or a $3 billion storm. But let's put the full faith and credit of the state of Florida behind this reinsurance pool. Now, taxpayers may say, but wait a minute, does that mean that we have to plunk down all those billions of dollars and put them in the bank in case we need it? Not true, and I'm sorry to make this so long. Thanks to Governor Bush and Ray and the others who've been in the legislature, we have one of the best credit ratings of any governmental entity in the world. The state of Florida does. First of all, we got $6 billion, thanks to Jeb Bush and Ray, people like that. We've got $6 billion in savings in the bank today. Secondly, we have a bond ability that is truly remarkable and persuasive in the bond markets. So the way this would work is that we wouldn't put the cash in for this reinsurance between 22 and 28 billion. Instead, what we would say is, if that 100-year storm hit, we would draw down our savings to help pay for that, for those costs. And we would use the full faith and credit of the state to go into the bond market. And we would borrow the money, if necessary, or part of the money, and pay it back over 20 or 25 years or something like that. It's like bonding the money to build a school. It's a need that you have right now, you bond it, you pay it off over time. So that's why it's important that the state continue to run in a solvent fashion, the way that Governor Bush has run the state. But the reason we are able to create this opportunity for rates to go down and for risk to be mitigated is because the state has been run in a financially sound fashion by Ray, by Jeb Bush, by the people who've been there before I got there. Long explanation, but that's the theory of how this would work, and it ought to take the sting away from some people's fear that we're going to have to bank these billions of dollars, in case we have people who have hurricane losses. Sorry for the long explanation. But our plan then is that the savings that are accrued by not having to go to Bermuda to buy this reinsurance at an extraordinary price, the savings that would be created by using the full faith and credit of the state would drop down directly into policy premium reductions for policyholders. I'm sorry to make that so long.
I seem to feel a great tension between your desire that the state of Florida get out of the insurance business and what Senator Gates has just explained, that the state of Florida is up to its ears in the insurance business through not only citizens' property but as a reinsurer, and there are proposals to get even more involved in the insurance business. How do you reconcile your desire to get out of it and these proposals to get deeper into it?
Well, I don't think Florida's going to ever get out of the cap fund security business, but the citizens insurance, I am absolutely. I don't think it's just me. I think it's a lot of legislators have some reluctance to see the changes or the expansion of the citizens insurance. So I think it's our job as legislators, and certainly I can only internalize it's my job, is to always be mindful of that. I mean, I think it's our job to always say, we're at the situation this week, and we're at the situation with the insurance business, but we can't ignore it. I mean, so let me answer your question. Here's my commitment to the citizens of Florida is that in 2 years, 3 years from now, that we don't ignore, let's say that we create a stable, that the insurance, property insurance becomes a more stable atmosphere, okay? My commitment is that we will not quit talking about this, that we will come back in the sessions of 2009 and 2010 and still talk about property insurance in maybe in a totally different manner, maybe with a totally different philosophy, because the market is now much more stable, and now we can see us, the taxpayers and the state government, less involved through the citizens and through other avenues that we may need to be a part of. But that is always at the forefront of my mind as we approach this issue, not only mine, but many others. So there really are two different issues. There's the citizens insurance, and then there's the cap fund.
I'm not saying these proposals to increase the state's role as a reinsurer or to widen the scope of citizens' property insurance and let us sell other kinds of insurance as well are necessarily bad things or won't work. But if they're implemented, it seems to me would make it even more difficult farther down the line to back away from state involvement in insurance.
Well, in the legislation on the House side, it requires in 2 years to come back and review a lot of these issues that we're dealing with cap fund and with citizens insurance. And so that's what I'm saying, you know, part of the discussions we've had on the House side is that this isn't a one-time, quote, fix. I mean, it's not really a fix, but a one-time decision to expand some of the roles of the state's role in this. But the commitment is to come back and say, hopefully it worked. The most important, I'll be honest with you, I think Don would agree with me, but the most important part of this discussion are we don't have hurricanes. I mean, that's really the key, and none of us can control that. But that really is, as we look at the reality of what we're dealing with, the less active our storms, not having hurricanes this past year is the reason we were able to have a special session like we are. If we wouldn't have had another hurricane, a very active season last year, the decisions would be much more dramatic than what we're talking about today. So yes, the answer to your question is that I think that's my job to always look out for the taxpayer and see what decisions we're making, how they have long-term effects, and then come back and tackle those issues when hopefully it's less of an attention on the whole insurance issue.
And Jim, I know your view on this because I read your editorials, but I would draw this analogy. Having the state become involved in using its full faith and credit in the reinsurance market is akin to the state allowing school districts to bond for improvements. In other words, the state's not out there swinging a hammer and nail to build a new school. The state is not in the school construction business. The state is simply enabling its full faith and credit to be used to construct school buildings or make improvements. I agree with Ray. My stomach turns at the thought of the government actually setting up an insurance agency. I think we've had, at best, mixed blessings and some severe pain as a consequence of the way Citizens Insurance has become a government insurance agency. I had a very heated colloquy with the head of Citizens Insurance last Tuesday in the Senate Insurance Committee meeting about the way that they treat people. But then I ended by asking a rhetorical question that kind of brought the house down. I said, so I guess I can't ask you not to act like government, because they are government. But I think there's a difference between that and allowing the full faith and credit of the state to be used to, in effect, create an environment where insurance companies can do business and where people can afford to live in the state of Florida. Now, you know, it was a George Bernard Shaw who said consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, and maybe I'm being philosophically inconsistent, but I'll go back to Mr. Lincoln's litmus test.
If I can just add one more thing quickly to that, is that when Citizens was created, if you just look at kind of the summary of why it was created as an insurance of last resort. And today it's the insurance of only resort. And so that being a fact, that's where we have to start the debate this week and go back to the philosophy of what it was created for. And so that's why I say we can't quit talking about this, even as hopefully the market stabilizes and it isn't quite the crisis that we're in today. So we will always go back to the original philosophy that this was created as a last resort and ultimately get out of the business.